Hello, everybody. How are you doing? And unfortunately, I'm still suspended, but that's not the topic. Today, they teased some upcoming changes for specifically life. So, if you guys are not aware, in PvP right now, life is the top school in the entire game. It is really overpowered, and everyone's has been complaining about life, specifically about healing. So, because healing right now in the meta is really annoying to play against. It is not fun to play against. And people basically on life they just stall out games. And it's just frustrating to play against for everybody, and it's very, very hard to beat. Very, very hard to counter, very, very hard to beat. So, finally, life is finally getting the nerf, and we will review all the changes one by one, and I'll give you guys my thought on it. Alright, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Regenerate. This spell, I don't even describe it in words, or like what it has been doing to this game. This spell is like the epitome of life. It's like the most abused spell in the game at the moment, and people basically jade with this spell and they make themselves nearly unkillable. This spell heals for so much. It has such a high heal value, has very high burst and a very high overtime. And with the outgoing how it is in the game, people basically heal for double the base. And not in this meta, that is a lot. And they could do it endlessly, non-stop, making themselves unkillable and stall out the game, basically. Now, finally, that is going to be no longer. So, if you look at the bottom, if you look at the spell, the regular spell, is now PvP banned. And instead, you will have to upgrade the spell to the bottom tier, which will allow you to use in PvP. So there are two major changes for the bottom tier. The first change is the more minor one, and that is the burst heal nerf. One of the biggest problems with Regenerate was its huge burst heal. It heals for 420 health, which is a lot for a burst heal that has with an OT on top of it. So with outgoing, people can heal for 800, 900 healing base. That's without a sanctuary or a healing blade from the leaf foot. With outgoing crit, they can heal almost 900 for some cases, depending on the setup. And that's a lot. And then they have a 2100, 2300 heal over time on top. And that is very difficult to burst down. That is very difficult. And the spell is used very cheap. So now what they did, as you can see, they made the burst heal 175. So the burst heal will no longer be this insanely powerful move right off the bat. So countering the spell is actually good. It's punishable. One of the best things about Regenerate is even if you end up countering it, like the Life Wizard would still get good value just from that. So the insane burst heal has now been nerfed significantly. So now the real heal is within the overtime like it's supposed to be, which is really, really good. So we'll no longer have that insane burst heal, so it's not going to always be a good move just from that alone. But here's the bigger catch. Do you see this up top? These 4 little dots on top? What this symbol means are copy limits, and there are 4 of them. So what this means is that you can only put 4 regenerates in your deck. No matter how much no matter how much card space your deck offers, you'll only get 4 copies now. That is excellent. That's a great change. So you cannot put 5, 6, 7, or even if you're going full Jade mode, like Darkmoor deck, and put 10 copies. So you can only have 4 copies in your deck, and only 4 copies. Not only you have 4 copies in your deck, but you have 4 copies for the game, because the biggest change of all is this symbol right here. What this X1 means is that it simply means every copy is a one-time use per game. You will not get these back from reshuffling. So once you use a regenerate, you will use that spell for the entire game. You will not get it back. That's the best part about this. So basically, all life wizards can now only have 4 regenerates per game. And only 4 because TC versions are PvP banned, so you cannot use any TC versions of the spell, which is an excellent change. And the heal is still a very, very, very good heal. They actually even buffed the heal on the on the overtime side of things. So what this change does is that it actually makes the spell what it's intended for. A situational comeback, not a spell to be used consistently. So now you'll be forced to time the spell perfectly in order to actually get the value out of it. Because if you time it wrong or do it through an infection and it's not good, then it's a bad heal that you'll never get back. What this does is basically now games will eventually end, because you're limited to 4 regenerates per game. And that's a very good change, right? The nerfing to the burst heal, the 4 copies, and the X1, that's a very, very good change, because constant heal spamming is one of the most annoying, unfair, and unfun types of games you can play in PvP right now. So with all these factors in there, it basically eliminates the spammability, but it's still usable because the heal is still a very, very good heal. So if you actually use this as it's intended and not just constantly be at full health at all game and just stall your opponents out, then this spell is still fine. So I think they've done a good job with the balancing. This spell is still very, very good. It's a very strong heal. It's very good. You just cannot only use this spell to win. You have to use other spells besides this to win the game. And you have to, again, like I said, you have to time it right. You cannot just regenerate at full health just because you can. So that's good. That is a very, very good change. So now lives will finally be killable. I know, it's insane. You're not going to have to be forced to play a 3-hour game that never ends. Now to the next change. I'm going to go over Pigsy a little bit faster. So it's the same thing with Pigsy. So what Pigsy currently does is the burst heal is a lot stronger and the overtime heal is a lot weaker. So it's like 600 something for the burst heal and 300 for the overtime, which honestly made this spell one of the most frustrating spells to go up against, because again, countering these spells is useless. It had a very high burst heal, so it's almost like a miniature satyr that also gave a heal overtime that no one would really counter, because was never worth really countering. It was never worth clockworking, never worth even like tritening or pirating. It was never worth it, because the vast majority of the spell's value was within the burst heal that you cannot do anything about. And unfortunately, just like Regenerate, this spell would heal pretty good even through an infection. So now what this does, and that it has a small heal as a burst heal, it's a very small burst heal of 125, and the overtime is the big part of the heal instead. So the overtime got a huge buff to make up for the change in the burst heal. So they swapped the heals of this spell, and they made the overtime spell protected, which it's fine. I guess they deserve it. I guess they deserve a little bit of something. But just like Regenerate, you can only carry 4 copies in your deck no matter what, and they're only one-time use as well. So just like Regenerate, once you use a spell, once you use 1 copy, you'll never use it again for the rest of the game, which is excellent. So now this forces people to time their heal usage. If you use a heal at a bad time, you're screwing yourself over now. Versus before, where you could do literally whatever you want and just keep healing over and over again, no matter what. So this is an excellent change. That ×1 change, that's like the biggest factor, because both Regenerate and Pigsy are still going to be very, very strong heals. They're very good healing cards. Like that, these are powerful heals. The copy limit doesn't matter that much, since people didn't carry more than 4 or more than 5 heals, like even Jades, like, because you never really needed it. You never really needed to carry above 5 regenerates, unless again you are intentionally jading, which a lot of people did, which was what this update is trying to target. Like the purpose of this is to target people that only heal. They're not trying to target regular lives that still heal, because like again, healing is life's school identity. You just cannot only heal. That is what the purpose of this change is. So they're still very powerful heals. You just cannot only heal. So you're forced to play life like you're intended. You're supposed to kill your opponent and use your school identity to heal yourself when you need to. But the key word here being when you need to. Not forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. That copy limit, that's like the biggest factor of basically nerfing the Jade. Yeah, the copy limit is like not that impactful. It's still impactful, still good. So you can still have 8 heals, which is a lot. 8 heals per game, burst heals like this. Over to powerful OT heals is still very, very good. If you care both Regenerate and Pigsy, you can have 8. And that is very, very good. That's more than enough to basically constantly keep you up in high health and win the game for life. But obviously without being able to stall. The stalling with reshuffle is out the door. And that is excellent. So I think, in my opinion, they did an excellent job with Regenerate and Pigsy, both keeping them powerful heals, but also not really allowing them to be used to Jade. So between that, they've done a good job, because they're still very good spells. Now, that's like the biggest ones. Now let's go to another change, Goat Monk. And honestly, this spell is justified. So they nerfed the heal by about 200 something. Yeah, the top tier is 660. This is 435. 435. That's a 225 heal nerf. So Goat Monk got its heal nerf by 225. Which, again, it's justified. Obviously, this is not a healing spell, so it's not going to have any copy limits. But its healing is very, very low. So obviously, you can carry as many copies and you can shuffle them back. It's only Regenerate and Pigsy that get this copy limit. So what this heal does is basically, it allows this spell to be more balanced. It's a lot more tradable. Because in its current state, it's nearly impossible to trade against Goat Monk. Goat Monk is like, before it had way too much value. It had insane value. And it still has insanely good value. That's the thing. It's still a very good spell. And Lifes are still going to use this a lot. I'd much rather see Lifes use, obviously, Goat Monk a lot instead of Regenerate a lot. Right? But this spell's focus is supposed to be more offensive focused rather than healing focused. Which is why the healing nerfed. So the lower value allows this spell to be traded against. Right? So now, if you use a higher DPP spell, you can get the same value or even more value than Goat Monk. Or if you use, versus before, you'd outvalue everything. Even though Goat Monk is a low DPP spell, it would still outvalue pretty much every other spell it fights against, just because it has very good damage and a very high healing. The healing was quite too much. So now, this spell is much more comparable to a spell like Wraith, or even Elephant, or let's say like Damage Kraken or Clanker. It's a lot more comparable to it, to these spells now, instead of being leagues above them in terms of value. So now it's possible to trade against a Goat Monk, which is really, really good. So that nerf was justified. It's a very justified nerf. But here's now where things get a little bit controversial. So these first 3 spells, Regenerate, Goat Monk, and Pigsy, they were all good, excellent changes. They're still all good spells. They're still great. Actually, they're still great spells. They're amazing spells still. Right? And even though Goat Monk got that nerf, it's still going to be a very high value spell. Right? It's still going to heal for people for 800 health. But it's just not going to be this insane, almost impossible to beat trade. Now, for the next change, we have Hungry Caterpillar, where this is where I disagree. I do not know why they did this. They cut the spell's heal by more than half. They cut the spell's healing by 330. More than half. And I gotta ask, why did they do it? They probably did it for the same reasons as Goat Monk, except it's not really justified. Unlike Goat Monk, Hungry Caterpillar is a Shadow Enhanced spell. It costs 5 pips and 2 Shadow pips. You cannot spam this spell. You cannot use this spell all too often. When it comes to your Shadow spells, you already have to time it properly. You have to use it at a perfect timing. You cannot just dump a Shadow spell and always be good, unlike the other previous spells. You cannot always do that. Even now, Lifes have to be careful when they Caterpillar. They cannot just Caterpillar as soon as they get their second Shadow pip, right? And Shadow Enhance spells are obviously supposed to have a lot more value than regular spells. And Hungry Caterpillar was actually life's weakest healing spell. It's hidden heal. It actually had the lowest value out of them all for its pip cost and value itself. I do not know why they nerfed Hungry Caterpillar like this. I don't know. I just suspect probably that they have a fear of Hungry Caterpillar being somehow used to Jade. But I gotta keep that in mind. Its healing is 604, which is still very good, but nothing over the top. And it will cost them 5 pips and 2 shadow pips, so they can never Caterpillar back to back. So I do not know why they nerfed it. Especially if they nerfed it to that degree. Like 310? That is, like I said, more than half. That is kind of outrageous. Right? So even for hitting life, that's going to be really hard to gain a lot of value of. This spell has like really bad value. Now, it's really not good. The healing is almost non-existent. It's only going to heal for you for 600 health. And it's over 5 rounds. That can get removed or stolen, though I'm not even sure even if you would want to steal that. It's just a question mark to me, honestly. I do not know why they did this to Hungry Caterpillar. I don't think they should have. If they were going to nerf it, maybe make it like 600 or like 570, or something like that. But more than half? 310? I think they went a little bit too far with this. Like, that is not a good change, in my opinion. Either they should put it back to 640, or if they are going to nerf it a little bit, because maybe it would have a lot of heal. I'm not going to lie, I'm not 100% sure, but like, I don't think the spell was really super broken, considering the fact that it used to heal less. Before it used to heal less before. It used to heal for like 500, then they made it 640, but now they're making it 310. If anything, if they were gonna nerf the heal on Caterpillar, at least it should put it back to how it was, like 500 whatever it was, 500 something with the protection on. At least do that. Though I don't think they should have done that either. I don't think they should have touched Hungry Caterpillar. I don't have an issue with Hungry Caterpillar. Even though it has decent value, it's a very expensive spell. Because it's a very expensive spell with the 2 shadow pips, these spells should have their very high value. They should. They deserve it. Like, and that's for all schools. Like, all schools, shadow enhanced spells obviously need to have a lot more value than usual. Like, this healing aspect is worse than Goat Monk. I mean, you can say, oh, it does way more damage. But it's also like a shadow enhanced spell. That's the thing. It's a much more expensive spell. If the shadows were like 1 shadow pip again, then maybe I can see it. But they're not. They're 2 shadow pips. So I don't think that was justified. I don't think they had to nerf Hungry Caterpillar. Like, that is not, like, Hungry Caterpillar is not the spell that was used by Jades. They never Caterpillared. Very rarely. They would just regenerate. If they didn't regenerate, then they will Goat Monk you. I just don't think they should have nerfed it at all. And if they were to nerf it, I guess if there was some, again, like I said, if there was some justifiable reason to nerf it, put it back to how it was. Like 550 or something like that with the protection. So that's the only spell I disagree with. Well, maybe except one more. And the last change is Dark and Stormy. So the spell, it's basically going to get about a 250 heal nerf. It's getting a bit nerfed, which I think it's not too bad of a change. It's not too bad. Like, that's still an insanely good value spell. It is insane. It is still very, very good. This is like the most highest value spell in PvP usable. It is insane. It is so good. But the problem, one issue that I have is Storm itself stinks. Storm is not very good in the meta right now. It isn't. It is a very hard set school. Everyone you're going to play against literally has 88 resist against you. And you only have 49 pierce on average to boast with your 180 damage, which isn't that much, considering that all other schools have about the same damage and pierces you, so you don't get that much more better stats in the other schools. So Storm, even though it's a low tier school, despite having all these insanely broken spells, like Dark and Stormy, insanely overpowered. Catalan, insanely overpowered. Catch of the Day, insanely overpowered. Clanker, insanely overpowered. And so forth and so forth. But I think they should have buffed Storm something else. I think they should have buffed a different spell for Storm. That's the thing. Like, Storm kind of stinks in the meta. So this spell, despite how broken it is, it's kind of like Storm's shining beacon against other classes. Like, you know how hard it is to beat people that have 88 resist against you? Like, this spell was the only way. Like, you're not beating anyone that has that much resist against you. Any deaths, imbalances, especially balances, deaths, non-trap stacking myths, ices, like, they will just destroy you every time. And your only hope is this spell right here, because all your other spells are just, despite how broken they are, just their stats alone just isn't enough. So I'm kind of happy, and not really happy, but like, cause maybe I'm biased because I do play Storm a lot, but and technically, if this spell was on a different school, absolutely 100% of all the way. But Storm kind of needs a spell like that, like on Dark and Stormy. They need it. They need their spells to be overpowered. That's the thing. They need it because their stats are awful. Like, they have the worst stats in the game by leaps and bounds. And all you have to do is have 88 resist. So if you all have to is ward and pin, and all Storm's advantages, their high DPP against you goes out the door. Although it's not a major nerf, and it's still gonna be a very good spell, and this spell is still gonna be the only reason why many of my matches will be won. Basically, like a lot of my games, the only reason why I won was because of Dark and Stormy. Because all other spells are just useless, because they don't do any damage. They don't do enough damage. Because of their high resist. Yes, they have very high base damage, very high DPP, highest in the game. But because people have 88 resist, the damage is just like negligible. And it's very frustrating to play against as a Storm. It's very frustrating. And with this change, it's going to be a little more frustrating. Though I still think it's justified, though. Like, that nerf is justified. Though I do wish they buffed something else for Storm. Like, something about Storm needs to be buffed, because it's a very bottom tier school right now. Right now, I would not mind their heals to be nerfed if they buffed something else. Their stats, especially, or their pierce, offensive power, literally anything else. But yeah, I guess I do agree with the Dark and Stormy change, but because, at the same time, because of the Dark and Stormy change, because the Dark and Stormy changes, I think Storm needs some kind of buff. They've always needed some kind of buff, and now a little bit more now, I guess. So that's, well, who knows? Maybe it will come, right? Maybe that's the hope. Maybe it'll come. Maybe they have some buffs planned for Storm, so it's not a useless school. Something that just because you have 88 resist against speed doesn't mean you automatically win, because that's what it is like in the meta right now. Unfortunately, if you have 88 resist, if you have a ward or pin, it's an auto win against Storm. It's really, really hard to win. Again, and Dark and Stormy was the only way you can really overcome that, and now it's getting nerfed. I just don't know how I'm going to be able to. I mean, it's still good, don't get me wrong, but it's like going to be much harder. Like, I just don't know how you can beat people that have 88 resist against you and have brace all day, counters all day, while at the same time they can tear you apart because you only have 55 resist against them. And even if you're warrior or pin, because of the scaling, you only have up to 65, which isn't that great. So that's like, I guess, my take on Dark. Although the change itself though is justified. It's good. It's good that they changed it. It's still a very good spell. I just hope they realize the side effects of what that would do to a school overall. So I guess that's like my 2 cents on the Dark and Stormy, though. I'm not saying it's not justified. They just need to, because Storm, unlike Life, is a very low tier school, they need to compensate the nerf, in my opinion. They need to compensate Storm with something. And yeah, so these are about all the changes and my opinions on them. So now Lives will not be able to just heal forever, and they can be traded against. That's all I gotta say. My only criticism is Hungry Caterpillar. That's like my only criticism. Like my major criticism. It's Hungry Caterpillar. I do not think that. But everything else was justified. Everything else. Pigsy, Regenerate, Goat Monk, Dark and Stormy. They're all good changes. So leave down your comment down below and let me know what you think. Right? Give me guys your opinion about what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Maybe a little bit of both. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We have fun here. Please subscribe and like. And see you guys in the next video.